story is from Extremely Tired of HR. I reported my former landlord to the IRS for tax fraud as revenge for him making up lies on me to keep my deposit. He had to file for bankruptcy and lost his condo. I'm glad he lost his house. I found this guy on Craigslist a few years ago. I like renting condos from private owners as opposed to renting apartments. Typically, by renting a condo, it's safer. You have more caring residents, you get to have a luxury apartment-style home with all the amenities, and you can negotiate pricing, etc. I am an excellent tenant, and anyone who I have rented from will tell you that. I paid a $1,000 deposit to move into this guy's condo. I was on a year lease. He lives in another state, but we were on the same time zone. On month 8 of my lease, I came home to a door that wouldn't open. I couldn't get the door unlocked for shit. I had 2 keys on me. As much as I tried to turn them, I couldn't. One of the keys even broke in the lock. I waited 2 hours. I called, texted, and emailed my landlord, and he did not pick up. And I thought maybe he had someone to change the locks for some reason. I honestly didn't know what to think and had no one to help me. The lady who lived across from me saw me in distress as she was going into her apartment. I had never seen her, but she asked me if I were okay, and I explained to her that I couldn't get into the apartment. She told me that she knows of an on-call locksmith. She gives me his number. I tell her thanks and reach out to my landlord a few more times. No response. I had no choice but to call the locksmith, plus I had to pee like The locksmith arrives and could not get the door unlocked with my key. He says he can replace the lock for like $100. I told him I was renting a condo and couldn't get in touch with the owner, and didn't know when would be the next time I could get in touch with him. After he took the lock off, he told me it was faulty. So he replaced the lock. I told the landlord this via email and text and voicemail, and told him that I could send him copies of the keys if he wanted. Okay, so fast forward to the end of my lease. I demand that he does a walkthrough with me. He said he wouldn't. I told him that if he didn't do a walkthrough, I would be notifying the condo office, as he did not have permission to sublease by the association. He then had a friend to serve as his proxy to come meet me and walk through the unit. The place was spotless. I know how to clean. I took multiple photos and videos and showed his proxy, who is a police officer, the unit. Actually, they are both police officers who used to work together. We both literally tested all the appliances, faucets, checked the blinds, carpets, hardwood, everything. His proxy gave me the okay and said that everything looked great. I give his proxy the keys and later that night left for my new city. So fast forward to a month later, I haven't heard from him about my deposit. He ignored all my emails and phone calls. He finally gets back with me 2 months after I moved out and has all this ridiculous made-up about how I damaged his unit. Broken blinds, scratches on the hardwood floor. He made it seem like I damaged his door by getting the lock replaced. He said there were scratches on the outside of his door, rust here and there. Broken dishwasher, broken sink, oven was broke. Broken dryer, SMFH, just all lies. I would never leave a unit in that condition. He sent me an itemized list of all the charges that magically came out to be $1,000, the same as my deposit. He was always planning to keep my money. He wanted that money to either ball on it or upgrade his condo. I hated him. I decided I wasn't going to go to court because I had moved to a different state and live alone, but I thought of something. He rented to me under the table and likely didn't claim my rent payments as earned income. I had all my wire transfers on my bank statement. I had his routing and account number and a copy of his driver's license as we agreed to swap IDs when I signed the lease to make sure I wasn't getting scammed. I found his out-of-state address online, gathered all my bank statements, gathered his bank account numbers, and made a report with the IRS. About a few years later, I check up on things and that bastard lost his condo and lost everything he owned in bankruptcy. I paid for and downloaded his court records and saw proof that he lost everything, including his condo and cars, and had his bank account seized. I'm not sure if he has gone to jail or anything, but I'm so glad that bastard got his karma. He stole money from me that I gave him to rent a condo, and he ends up losing that same condo to bankruptcy. Him and anyone who calls him a friend. He can rot for all I care. The revenge was truly perfect and executed flawlessly. By reporting his landlord's tax fraud, OP hit his landlord where it hurt the most. Landlord's dishonest behavior finally led to his bankruptcy, and he lost everything. The revenge was really satisfying and cool. Let's start with a very interesting Reddit story from Zakana. I got fired. Employers' lawyers should have done their homework. I did. This happened to me about 20 years ago while in college. I am being deliberately vague because reasons. Background. I got a job basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 a.m. and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 p.m. person arrived. Most of the time I read, watched TV, or played games on my laptop. I probably worked no more 10 minutes of every hour unless something went wrong. It went on like this for years. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day, while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was going to become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 p.m. that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 p.m., did the normal things, and then left at 12 a.m. when my relief arrived. It was a little more work, more call volumes, etc. Then, after 9 months, things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total Karen. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time, a system jammed up at a remote site, and she called them. 5 hours later, I saw the jam was still there, so I called that site again to see if they were still working on it or if something else was wrong because the woman on our end, who would be the one to help them, was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday just after having left work? I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them. Things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I tiptoed around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did the stupid highlighting thing, and my log entries started getting more and more detailed, even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The firing. The following summer, just after I crossed year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back, after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task, which involved certain updates. I explained to him how I did it and so forth. He then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the date code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyways, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me. So I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means that I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason. The only exceptions were state and federal laws such as race, religion, etc. I thought I was screwed. So I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounds good, but it resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. But their fancy, high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by courts. This site cited a case from the state's Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they had to have a real reason to fire me. The revenge. With that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about this program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my own computer and laptop. I experimented. The date of the file, which they tried to use against me, is baked into the version 2. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would, in reality, display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's site broke the script. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who had wrote it retired. The fix involved deleting 3 characters on one line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing, I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not done on weekends or holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law they broke and all the evidence I had collected, they were forced to settle with me. So in the end, their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework. I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I have known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. TLDR, I got fired by a large corporation, and though I had no recourse. Then I found out their lawyers missed something in my state's laws and forced them to pay me. Edit 1. Obviously, the terms of the settlement are confidential and AFIC, still in effect. It was a good portion of my salary though. I did also get unemployment during this time as well. I never found out how the reaction went down, as the main corporate office that would have dealt with it was in another state, and I never had any contact with those people. I imagine a new handbook was issued before they cut my check though, so I feel bad for those who remained. Karen's fate was sealed about a year later. I saw a Facebook post by a former co-worker mentioning that his job with them had ended, so I asked for details. The company experienced a huge loss in revenue. As a result, Karen lost her job as the site I had worked in was closed. Of about the 50 of us that worked in that office, only 10 or so were moved to another location. Thankfully, most of the ones I liked were old enough to retire. It did not take a genius to realize that my termination was simply a layoff disguised as a firing. This revenge was perfect and executed flawlessly. By uncovering a legal loophole and meticulously gathering evidence, OP outsmarted a large corporation and forced them into a costly settlement. These toxic corporate looters deserve these hefty settlements. The next story is from Pokey, 1984. I posted this as a reply to someone else's mailbox story. I was informed that it should be its own post, so here it is, edited slightly for clarity. This didn't start out as a quest for vengeance. We just wanted mail delivery to our house. Vengeance came as a byproduct, but it was truly delightful nonetheless. So, mailbox story time. This happened back in 1982, for the record. My folks moved to a very rural area on a gravel road. No one had previously lived here, so it was a battle just getting mail delivery in the first place. My folks went several rounds with the local postmaster. He was somewhat enamored with his own power and very much a rules-to-the-letter kind of guy. Every I must be dotted, every T crossed, and if there's so much as a semicolon out of place, you'll have to start all over again. He seemed to have made it his personal mission to make getting mail delivery to a new address as difficult as humanly possible. Ultimately, my folks managed to fill out the paperwork to his satisfaction, and he begrudgingly allowed us to put up a box and receive mail delivery at our new home. Dad was extremely careful in the placement of our box, and making absolutely certain was the exact height, precise placement from the road, etc., to avoid annoying our local postmaster any more than we already had. There are, or at least were, very specific rules about rural mailboxes. Dad followed every single one. That first mailbox was perfect. The man who drove the road grader was as annoyed as the local postmaster, as he now had a new driveway to accommodate. We suspect that's why he had it out for our mailbox. After the road grader had demolished 3 of our mailboxes, Dad got pissed. Previously, he'd used the most basic design, just a post in the ground with a box on top. Now, he was motivated. Dad got a hold of a 9-foot-long section of metal pipe. It's 4 inches in diameter, outer measurement, and has 3/4-inch thick walls. I have no idea what this was originally intended for, but I know how Dad used it. He dug a hole 5.5 feet deep. He welded an upside-down tripod shape, think open umbrella, to the bottom of the pole and dropped it into the 6-foot-wide hole. Each welded-on leg was about 3 feet of some kind of rebar, and there were 5 such spokes. He then dropped some huge rocks on top of the tripod shape to hold it in place. The empty spaces around the huge rocks were filled in with gravel, and he dumped sand to fill in the air gaps. Then he filled the rest of the hold in with dirt and mounted the mailbox on top of the post. 3 days after Dad installed the new mailbox, we heard the road grader coming down the road. Our house is a 1/4 mile from the road, but we heard the loud clang from inside. We also heard the cursing and swearing from inside. No one went down to look until they heard the road grader drive away. When they did, the box itself was slightly dented on one side, but it was still firmly upright and functional. 3 weeks later, we received a bill from the township for a bent grader blade. It was accompanied by a letter informing us that we had caused damage to city property because our mailbox was installed incorrectly. It would need to be moved, and we were liable for a bill of a couple $1,000s worth of repairs. Here's where it becomes pro-revenge instead of petty. Recall the fact that the local postmaster was annoyed with us over our battle to get mail delivery? Mom had made a point of each time we reinstalled the mailbox, taking photographs down to the post office and having the local postmaster sign off approval of the height, placement, etc. She'd done the same with Dad's superpost and had documented, signed approval of the box, dated the day before the road grader had bent his blade trying to demolish the box. She submitted copies of the invoice for the grader blade and the letter stating that the damage was our fault because our mailbox was incorrectly placed to the post office. She also submitted copies of the official post office approval of the box to the township. The jerk of a postmaster was also quite prideful and became furious that his authority was being called into question by some podunk township. As far as he was concerned, the township wasn't questioning my parents. They were stating that his judgment was wrong. I don't know what went down between the postmaster and the township, but we received a second letter from the post office reiterating their approval of our mailbox. We also got a formal apology from the township and noticed that the road grader's contract had been terminated because he'd lied about damage to city property. It was worded with a tone that said, "Please don't sue us because a contracted employed damaged your property." For the record, that post Dad installed nearly 40 years ago is still standing. We've replaced the box on top many times. That post, however, has now wrecked 2 cars and a truck in addition to that long-ago road grader. The revenge was cool as cucumber. The road grader's attempts backfired and cost him his job. That was the truly satisfying to apologising to OP's mom. BTW, the best part was road grader losing his job. The revenge was really perfect, and it was executed flawlessly. The next story is from Whip Solo. Karen demands I move 2 cars impounded by the police and meets Mr. Sparky. This story is from roughly 2013. I was an adjuster for Lizard Insurance and would go to many tow lots after car accidents and decide if a car was a total loss or send it to a body shop, as well as do the initial write-up of an estimate on repair costs. The tow lot I was at this day also worked with the state police and housed their overflow storage for anything deemed evidence and on hold from release. These vehicles were kept behind a locked gate inside the already fenced, gated tow yard. I was there to do an appraisal on 2 vehicles that had been involved in a minor accident. However, both were left unable to drive from the scene due to either multiple flats, lights knocked out, or windows busted. I've finished the first vehicle, and I've started taking photos of the second vehicle. I have headphones in, and I'm listening to the album Cavalcade by the Flatliners. Seriously, check them out. Anyhow, I see a woman I'd guess around 50 walk up to the police evidence lot and the gates swing open out of the corner of my eye. Not paying much attention, as the vehicles I was working with were on the same side of the lot, but about 50 meters down from the evidence lot. As my back is turned to this woman I will here on refer to as Karen, I take the last couple of photos I need, the last being a photograph of the VIN of the vehicle, which is located where the windshield meets the hood, almost on the dash through the windscreen. Hope this makes sense. Karen, out of literally nowhere, grabs both cables to my headphones from behind and rips them out of my ears. Karen, excuse me. Why are there 2 cars in front of mine so I cannot get it out? This lot would stack cars in 4 or 5 deep side by side and move them around with a small truck to release them. Me? Please don't touch me, and I don't think you should be in there. And I don't, Karen, you shouldn't be listening to music on the job anyway, or slacking off taking pictures of other people's belongings. You're probably back here stealing. I attempt to point at the Lizard Insurance logo on my blue jacket, but Karen continues on. Karen, are you going to do your job, or do I need to call the police because you're refusing to give me my property? Me. Have you went into the office at ABC Towing? Karen. No, I saw you here, and you need to move these cars so I can get mine and leave. As Karen opens the door and gets into the first car and the ones blocking her. Me. Hey! No, you can't go in there, that is police evidence. I use my cell phone to call ABC Towing and inform them. Karen, if you won't move these cars, then I will. Where are the keys? Me. In the office with the employees. At this time, the manager comes running out with one of those weird smartphone / Nextel style phones in his hand. ABC manager. Hey lady, get the hell out of there. Those cars are property of the state police. Frantically uses his Nextel to talk to someone. sees the chain used to keep the lot closed has been cut with bolt cutters yawl. Karen was carrying a pair of bolt cutters and had thrown them into her car when she was back at it. And Karen argue back and forth. I intently listen and half pay attention as I finish my duties for work. About 8-10 minutes pass and 7 police cars come flying back into the lot. Greets the police and explains what is going on, but not after Karen attempts to scream at the police that I had stolen her car. Police, tell Karen to stand over in a direction he points, sending one officer to wait with her. Turns out the lieutenant was on scene who was in charge of the county's police tow licenses. After getting M's story, LT comes to me and takes mine. While I'm informing him of what happens, Karen overhears and starts yelling and attempting to approach me. The officer standing with her grabbed her by her arm. Karen yanked that arm out of the female officer's hand and shoved her, surprisingly knocking the officer down. Karen is screaming incoherently as she charges toward me. The LT steps in front of me and with his taser hits Karen with the most beautiful sound in the world. Karen goes limp and face plants in the dirt, light gravel of the lot and skids slightly. They immediately handcuff her. Turns out Karen had walked onto the lot carrying the bolt cutters while I was in the office talking with staff about the 2 cars I needed to adjust. She had been roaming the lot until she saw me and I happened to be near her car. Karen was charged with burglary, 2 counts of tampering with evidence, assault on a police officer, assault on me, trespassing and resisting arrest. I know Karen did jail time, but I'm not sure how much. Years later, the tow company I now own impounded her car for being double parked. She remembered who I was and quietly paid. The revenge was perfectly executed. Karen's arrogance and entitlement led her to escalate the situation, resulting in her own downfall. Her attempts to be over-smart backfired, leaving her with a criminal record and a humiliating experience. The next story is from Jerdman, 76. Competitor IT company steals our articles. I owned an IT company, we'll call it Ubertech, that strictly manages business networks. No website development, graphics, etc. One of my employees was tackling an interesting support request with instructions for making changes to a company's website. This happens from time to time where a customer gets confused with their various tech vendors or assumes that we provide all tech-related services. He called the person to get more context, and being in earshot, I could tell that my employee's call was quickly escalating with a frustrated person on the other end, and he has already offered to pass the call off to his manager, me. Ubertech, how can I help you? Pissed off website owner. Web owner. I want to know what is going on here. I don't know who you are, I don't know why you're calling me, and I don't know why you have my support information. Me? Sir, to be honest, I don't know who you are, why we are calling you, and why we have your support information either. But together, I think we can figure this out. I understand that you have a website and made a request for some changes. Who hosts your website? Web owner. Derp company. On their support website, there are instructions to send support requests. I followed them, and now I have you calling me with my support information. Me. Sir, I definitely want to get down to the bottom of this. We do not even offer website services. If you would please work with me, I am sure we can get an answer. What I want to do is have you share your screen with me and then show me what you did to request support. I had him run our remote control software. He then proceeded to navigate to DerpCo's support website, support.derpco.com, navigated through the customer self-service pages to a knowledge base article, KB, on how to submit a support. He pulled up this specific KB article, and I was staring at a verbatim copy of an article that I had written on our own support site. There were no changes to the article, including the step to email your support request to, and it was my company's email address right there. Me. Thank you for taking the time to show me this. I think I've found the problem. Notice the email address in the instructions. It is telling you to email ubertech.com. That is us. Now, please allow me to show you something. I then scrolled down to the bottom of DerpCo's plagiarized support article and noted the creation date, 2007. I then navigated to our company support website, support.ubertech.com, and navigated to our own matching article. We both confirmed that it was the same article, and I showed him the creation date of our article, 2005. Web owner. Oh, look at that. Me. I think it is safe to say that DerpCo has stolen our content, did not even update the instructions, misleading you to send a support request to us. Web owner. I am sure you have a few things to take care of with DerpCo. I would appreciate it if you do not mention us when you call them. Me. Of course, sir. Thank you for your time with this. I immediately searched DerpCo's support website looking for more of our stolen content, found a total of 5 articles, and promptly printed them out and saved copies as PDF. So what to do in this situation? Do I call the owner of DerpCo? This is a small town, so I needed to be clever and not taint my own image. How do I get revenge? Hire a lawyer? Leave the articles as is and hope more support requests come to us that can bring us business? Revenge unleashed. No, I wrote a press release. News release date for immediate release. Title: Ubertech endorsed by local competitor. I got some great kudos from local businesses. One client in particular was rolling. 2 days later, I get an email from the owner of DerpCo. I would appreciate it if you were to remove the press release from your website. This is a small town and it is just not good business. I went to their support site and still found 3 articles from our company. I wrote back and told him that I would be happy to do so, but there are at least still 3 articles on their support site that need to be removed. 2 days later, I got another email confirming that the articles were removed. Epilogue. In the end, I took down our press release, but still have a copy kept in our office and would tell this story our new employees. Edits. fixed typos, abbreviations, added more clarification. TL, DR, competitor steals our KB articles and failed to make any revisions, leaving our company info in the instructions. We created a press release to announce how they endorsed us, as the instructions were sending their clients to us for support. The revenge was perfect and was executed flawlessly. By strategically releasing a press release, OP exposed the competitor's unethical behavior without directly tarnishing his own reputation. This was really a strategical move on the part of OP to take a brutal revenge.